The world does not always destroy you with one great tragedy. Sometimes it breaks you slowly, a disappointment here, a betrayal there, a failure you never recovered from, a person who took advantage of your kindness, an excuse you repeated until it became your identity. And eventually, you become softer where life requires strength, but there is another way. The world is not interested in your intentions. It does not care how good your heart was, how hard you tried, or how badly you wanted things to work. You can be loyal and still be betrayed. You can be disciplined and still lose. You can be kind and still be exploited. You can do everything you believe is right and still watch someone else receive what you thought you deserved. And this is where many people break. They spend their lives expecting reality to follow the rules they created in their minds. They believe good people should always be rewarded. They believe hard work should always produce success. They believe loyalty should guarantee loyalty in return. And when reality violates those expectations, they become bitter, confused, and powerless. But what if the problem is not that life is too cruel? What if the problem is that you were never taught how to become difficult to break? Because the first transformation begins when you stop expecting the world to give you what you think you deserve. Stop expecting the world to be fair. There is a painful lesson that most people resist for years. The world does not owe you fairness. You can work harder than someone and still watch them receive the opportunity you wanted. You can be loyal to someone and still be betrayed. You can do everything correctly and still lose. You can give your best intentions to someone who responds with indifference. None of this means you should become bitter. It means you must stop building your strength on the assumption that life will always reward you according to what you believe you deserve. The expectation of fairness can become a hidden weakness because it makes you emotionally dependent on circumstances behaving according to your rules. When they don't, you feel personally attacked by reality itself. You ask, why me? Why did this happen when I did everything right? Why did they get rewarded? Why wasn't my effort recognized? These questions may be understandable, but if you remain trapped inside them, they accomplish very little. They turn your attention toward what should have happened instead of what can still be done. A ruthless person, in the useful sense of the word, learns to separate reality from preference. Reality is what happened. Deferee is what you wanted to happen. Confusing the two creates unnecessary suffering. You wanted someone to stay. They left. You wanted recognition. Someone else received it. You wanted loyalty. You discovered betrayal. You wanted an easy path. You encountered resistance. The event itself may be painful, but your refusal to accept that it happened can create a second layer of suffering. Acceptance does not mean approval. You can accept betrayal without approving of betrayal. You can accept rejection without believing you deserved rejection. You can accept unfair circumstances without deciding that your life is over. Acceptance simply means you stop arguing with the existence of the event. Once you accept reality, you can begin responding to it. This is where strength begins. Weakness often appears as endless negotiation with facts. A person keeps telling himself that things should have been different. He revisits the same conversation. He imagines the perfect response. He thinks about what he would say if he could go back. He waits for an apology that may never come. Meanwhile, time continues moving. The world does not pause while you demand an explanation. You have to learn something that is uncomfortable but liberating. Sometimes there will be no satisfying explanation. Some people will hurt you because they are selfish. Some will leave because their priorities changed. Some opportunities will disappear because circumstances shifted. Some people will receive advantages you believe they did not earn. And sometimes you will simply lose. The mature response is not to become passive. It is to become adaptable. If the environment changes, change your strategy. If someone closes a door, find another route. If a weakness is exposed, strengthen it. If you lose an opportunity, create another one. If someone refuses to recognize your value, stop spending your life trying to convince them. This is what it means to stop expecting the world to be fair. You stop asking reality to cooperate with your emotional preferences. Instead, you ask yourself a better question. What can I do with what I have? That question contains enormous power because it returns responsibility to you. Imagine two people facing the same setback. One spends months explaining why the situation was unfair. The other acknowledges the unfairness and begins calculating his next move. The first person may be morally justified in his anger, but justification does not automatically produce progress. The second person understands something more important. Being right about what happened does not guarantee that you will recover from it. You need action. This does not mean suppressing emotion. Pain should be acknowledged. Anger should be understood. Grief should be processed. But none of these emotions should become permanent residences. Feel them, study them, then decide what comes next. There is another danger in expecting fairness, entitlement. When you believe that hard work automatically guarantees success, failure can feel like an insult. When you believe that kindness automatically guarantees loyalty, betrayal can make you cynical. When you believe that being a good person guarantees a good life, hardship can make you question everything. But character is not a transaction with the universe. You do not become disciplined because discipline guarantees rewards. You become disciplined because discipline gives you the capacity to continue when rewards are delayed. You do not become honest because honesty guarantees that everyone will treat you honestly. You become honest because you refuse to allow other people's behavior to determine your character. This distinction matters. If your behavior depends on how fairly the world treats you, your character is being controlled by external events. But if your standards remain intact regardless of circumstances, you become much harder to break. Someone betrays you, and you become wiser without becoming cruel. Someone rejects you, and you become stronger without becoming desperate. Someone underestimates you, and you use it as fuel without becoming obsessed with proving them wrong. You lose and you study the loss instead of allowing it to define you. This is disciplined ruthlessness, not cruelty toward others. Cruel honesty toward your own illusions. You stop telling yourself that life will become easier simply because you have suffered enough. You stop expecting people to behave according to your values. You stop assuming that good intentions will protect you from bad outcomes. You stop confusing fairness with reality. And once you do, something strange happens. You become calmer. Because uncertainty no longer shocks you. You already understand that circumstances can change without warning. So instead of demanding certainty, you develop adaptability. Instead of demanding guarantees, you develop competence. Instead of demanding sympathy, you develop resilience. Instead of waiting for the world to become fair, you become capable of operating within an unfair world. That is a much stronger position. The world can take things from you, but it becomes much harder for the world to take your ability to respond. And that is the real objective, not becoming invulnerable, becoming recoverable. You will still be hurt. You will still lose. You will still encounter people who disappoint you. But the difference is that pain no longer automatically becomes defeat. You learn how to absorb information from failure without absorbing an identity of failure. You learn how to experience rejection without becoming rejection. You learn how to encounter injustice without allowing bitterness to become your personality. You become more strategic because you no longer waste energy demanding that reality behave differently. You study reality, then you move. And once you stop expecting the world to be fair, you become ready for the next discipline. Becoming ruthless with the person who has the greatest ability to hold you back, yourself. Become ruthless with your own excuses. Most people think ruthlessness means becoming harder toward other people. They imagine refusing weakness, dominating competition, or never showing vulnerability. But the most useful form of ruthlessness is directed inward. It is the willingness to stop negotiating with the excuses that keep you exactly where you are. You know the excuses. I'll start tomorrow. I don't have enough time. I'll do it when I feel motivated. Things are too difficult right now. I've already failed too many times. Other people have advantages I don't have. Maybe this isn't the right time. Some of these statements may contain truth. That is what makes excuses so dangerous. An excuse does not always sound ridiculous. Sometimes it sounds intelligent. Sometimes it sounds compassionate. Sometimes it even sounds realistic. But ask yourself what happens after you repeat it. Does it move you forward? Or does it protect you from discomfort? That is the question. Because the mind is extremely creative when it wants to protect itself from difficult action. It will produce explanations that make avoidance feel reasonable. You don't need to exercise today because you're tired. You don't need to start the project because you need more preparation. You don't need to confront the problem because now isn't the right time. You don't need to change because your circumstances are difficult. And perhaps each statement is partly true, but life is rarely asking you to operate under perfect conditions. You have to learn to act while conditions are imperfect. Ruthlessness with yourself means removing the luxury of endless negotiation, not because you should hate yourself, because you respect your potential enough to stop lying to yourself. There is a difference between self-compassion and self-indulgence. Self-compassion says, I am struggling, so I will support myself while continuing forward. Self-indulgence says, I am struggling, therefore I no longer have to move. One gives you strength, the other gives you permission to remain unchanged. You must become capable of recognizing the difference. There will always be reasons not to begin. There will always be distractions. There will always be uncertainty. There will always be someone with more resources, more experience, more connections, more money, more confidence. If you wait until you have every advantage, you may spend your entire life waiting. The disciplined person asks a different question. What is possible with what I have right now? Maybe you have 1 hour, use it. Maybe you have limited resources, use them intelligently. Maybe you are inexperienced, learn. Maybe you failed, study the failure. Maybe nobody believes in you, continue anyway. You do not need to feel powerful before you act. Action often creates the feeling of power afterward. This is why motivation is unreliable. Motivation comes and goes, mood changes, energy changes, confidence changes, but a system can remain. A disciplined person does not ask every morning whether he feels like doing the work. He has already decided. That decision was made when his emotions were calm. Now his job is to follow through. This is one of the most important psychological shifts you can make. Stop making important decisions in the emotional moment when you least want to do them. Decide your standards in advance. If you say you will train 4 times a week, determine the schedule beforehand. If you say you will work on your skill every day, decide the minimum amount beforehand. If you say you will stop wasting hours on distractions, establish rules before temptation arrives. You are not trying to defeat your emotions. You are designing your environment so your emotions have less authority. That is strategic discipline. Your excuses will often become louder precisely when you are approaching something important. clutch. Pay attention to that. Resistance can be informative. When you suddenly want to reorganize your desk instead of doing the difficult work, notice it. When you suddenly feel the urge to check your phone, notice it. When you suddenly decide that tomorrow would be better, notice it. The goal is not to judge yourself. The goal is to recognize the pattern, because once you can see the pattern, you can interrupt it. You also need to stop romanticizing preparation. Preparation is valuable until it becomes disguised avoidance. You can read another book, watch another video, buy another course, create another plan, build another system, and still never execute. Knowledge without implementation can become another form of procrastination. At some point, you have to move from collecting information to producing results. This is where ruthlessness becomes practical. You stop asking whether you have discovered the perfect method. You choose a reasonable method and begin. You stop waiting for confidence. You build confidence through repetition. You stop waiting for permission. You create evidence. Every completed task becomes evidence that you can trust yourself. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens your identity. Every time you do what you said you would do when nobody was watching, you become more internally powerful. And the opposite is also true. Every promise you repeatedly break teaches your mind that your own words do not matter. That is why discipline is not merely about productivity. It is about self-trust. You are building a relationship with yourself. When you say you will do something and repeatedly refuse to do it, that relationship weakens. When you make realistic commitments and consistently honor them, it strengthens. So become ruthless, but be intelligent about what you demand from yourself. Do not create impossible standards and then use failure as an excuse to quit. Do not confuse exhaustion with discipline. Do not punish yourself for being human. Set standards that challenge you without destroying you, then enforce them consistently. The strongest person is not the person who never rests. It is the person who knows when to push, when to recover, and when an excuse is simply fear wearing a sophisticated disguise. Eventually, you begin to recognize the difference between a genuine limitation and a convenient story. A limitation says, "This is difficult, so I need a different strategy." An excuse says, "This is difficult, so I don't have to try." Learn to hear the difference, because the world will already give you enough obstacles. You do not need to become another obstacle in your own path. And when you become ruthless with your excuses, you stop asking whether you are capable of becoming someone stronger. You begin proving it through what you do when nobody is forcing you to move, when motivation disappears, when the conditions are imperfect, and when the easier choice is sitting right in front of you. Learn to control your emotions before they control you. Emotion is powerful because it feels immediate and true. Anger tells you to respond now. Fear tells you to retreat now. Pride tells you to prove yourself now. But intensity does not automatically mean importance. The person who reacts to every emotional impulse becomes predictable. And predictable people are easier to manipulate. Learn to create a pause between what you feel and what you do. When someone provokes you, observe the reaction before expressing it. Ask what exactly was wounded, your principles, your boundaries, or your ego. Emotional control does not mean becoming cold or suppressing everything. It means refusing to let a temporary state make a permanent decision. The calmer you become under pressure, the more clearly you can see the situation, and clarity gives you options that emotional reactions often destroy. Stop giving everyone access to your weaknesses. Not everyone deserves unrestricted access to your private fears, insecurities, ambitions, and emotional wounds. Vulnerability can create intimacy with trustworthy people, But revealing everything to everyone can leave you exposed to manipulation. Watch how people handle small pieces of information before giving them larger pieces. Someone who mocks another person's weakness may eventually use yours the same way. Someone who repeatedly turns your honesty into ammunition has already shown you something important. You do not need to become secretive or suspicious of everyone. You need discernment. Protect what is valuable until trust has been earned through consistent behavior. Your private world should not be an open room where anyone can walk in and rearrange the furniture, and the more carefully you choose who receives access to your inner life, the less power careless people have over you. Accept that some people will use your kindness. Kindness is valuable, but kindness without discernment can become an invitation. Some people will recognize generosity and respond with gratitude. Others will see it as an opportunity to take more. Do not become bitter when you discover the difference. Become wiser. Help because you choose to help, not because you need to be needed. Set limits before resentment appears. You can be compassionate without becoming endlessly available. You can forgive without repeatedly exposing yourself to the same behavior. The lesson is not to become cruel. It is to make your kindness deliberate rather than automatic. Detox from what you cannot control. Much of your suffering comes from trying to control things that were never yours to command. You cannot control another person's opinion, loyalty, emotions, choices, or timing. You can influence circumstances, but you cannot guarantee outcomes. The moment you accept this, your energy becomes more focused. Instead of obsessing over what someone might do, concentrate on your response. Instead of demanding certainty, prepare for possibilities. Detachment is not indifference. It is refusing to waste your strength fighting reality. You protect your peace by investing your attention where your decisions actually have power. Become comfortable with being misunderstood. If you need everyone to understand your choices, you will constantly be explaining yourself. People judge from limited information, personal biases, and their own interests. They may misunderstand your silence, your boundaries, your ambition, or your decision to walk away. You do not have to correct every perception. Explain yourself when clarification genuinely matters, but do not turn your life into a courtroom where you constantly defend your character. Being misunderstood can be the price of independence. When you stop needing universal approval, you gain the freedom to act according to your values rather than according to public opinion. Build strength in silence. Not every transformation needs an announcement. When you are rebuilding yourself, excessive talking can create the illusion of progress before the work has actually begun. Keep some plans private. Work quietly. Improve your skills, discipline, health, finances, and character without constantly seeking applause. Let results become the evidence. Silence also protects you from unnecessary opinions while you are still developing. People cannot easily interfere with what they do not know. The goal is not secrecy for manipulation. It is concentration. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is disappear from the noise and return stronger than before. Turn pain into discipline. Pain can either become your identity or become information. When something hurts you, study it instead of allowing it to consume you. A failure can reveal weakness. A betrayal can teach discernment. Rejection can force you to build self-worth that does not depend on approval. Do not romanticize suffering, but do not waste it either. Take the lesson, change the behavior, and become harder to break in the same way twice. Your scars should not make you bitter. They should make you more aware, more disciplined, and more difficult to manipulate. Become ruthless about who you are becoming. Your greatest responsibility is not proving yourself to the world, but deciding what kind of person you will become. Protect your standards. Choose your environment carefully. Stop feeding habits that weaken you, and stop entertaining relationships that repeatedly pull you away from your purpose. Ruthlessness here means refusing to negotiate with the version of yourself that wants comfort at the expense of growth. You will have to disappoint people, abandon old patterns, and choose discipline when nobody is watching. The future version of you is built through the decisions you make when convenience tells you to remain the same 9. Turn pain into discipline. It is to become impossible to control through weakness. You stop expecting fairness and begin adapting to reality. You stop making excuses and start demanding honesty from yourself. You learn to control your emotions instead of allowing anger, fear, pride, or rejection to dictate your actions. You become selective about who receives access to your weaknesses. You remain kind, but you stop confusing kindness with unlimited availability. You detach from what you cannot control and concentrate your energy where your decisions actually matter. You become comfortable being misunderstood. You stop announcing every move and allow your results to speak. Then you learn to use pain differently. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you begin asking, "What can this teach me?" That question changes the meaning of suffering. A betrayal becomes discernment. A failure becomes information. Rejection becomes independence. Difficulty becomes training, and slowly you stop becoming a victim of your circumstances. You become a student of them. That is what real ruthlessness means, not destroying other people. Destroying the excuses, illusions, emotional habits, and weak patterns that keep you from becoming who you are capable of becoming. Because the world will always contain disappointment. People will still betray you. Opportunities will still disappear. Plans will still fail. Some doors will close without explanation. You cannot control that. But you can control what those experiences create inside you. They can make you bitter, or they can make you sharper. They can make you fearful, or they can make you disciplined. They can make you hide, or they can force you to build strength where you were once weak. The choice is yours. And the person who understands this no longer needs the world to become gentler. He becomes stronger. If this speech changed the way you see hardship, subscribe to the channel and comment. Pain will not break me. It will build me, not as a declaration to the world, as a promise to yourself, because the future version of you is built through the decisions you make when convenience tells you to remain the same.